minutes are in our board packets. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Motion to approve, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. We have a few items to attend to today, and also in your packet is a list of items that will be coming to us in the next couple of months involving UCF and USF. That information is in your packets, and once the completed information is available, it will be forwarded to you. We have two bond resolutions to consider, but before we do that, I would briefly like to ask Governor Beard to make a comment, Chris, that he's picked up on and is concerned with, and I am too now.
Yeah, Chris, I think we talked about it at our last meeting. We've got two different bond types, I guess you could say. That one of them where the Board of Governors is reps and warranties a whole bunch of stuff to the state, and one of them where we're not involved, the universities themselves do it. And I just, I understand that this is kind of historical. It's been the way we've done it for years, that the Board of Regents started it, and it's been going on all that time. But, you know, my view is the Board of Governors and the Board of Regents aren't necessarily the same. So I just wanted kind of a history at the next meeting so we could take a look at this and see if, you know, if this is the same place we want to go.
Apparently this language came from the time when the Board of Regents was the only entity and actually owned the assets, which is substantially different from the way it is today. Okay, the two resolutions before us. The first one is from the University of Florida. Chris, you got 10 seconds.
Okay, yes, sir. This is the resolution for the University of Florida. Their College of Medicine is building a translational research facility. We have reviewed it, as well as the Division of Bond Finance. It is in good order. It's going to be funded from their indirect costs to overhead proceeds. And we have representatives from the university here, and I'm here to answer any questions on it.
Okay, this is in conformity with both our rules and regulations and has been approved by the state. We need a resolution to authorize the Division of Bond Finance of the State Board of Administration of Florida to issue debt on behalf of the University of Florida to finance the construction of a can't even read my own writing, transactional research facility on the main campus of the University of Florida. It has been moved, seconded. Are there any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passed unanimously. Second resolution involves Florida Gulf Coast Housing Finance Corporation. Chris?
And likewise, this is a dormitory, the 12th dormitory at Gulf Coast, which of course continues to aggressively grow. It's in conformity with our guidelines. We reviewed it. The State Division has reviewed it and recommend approval. University staff here are also here as well to address any questions.
Okay, I will entertain a resolution of the Board of Governors authorizing the issuance by the Florida Gulf Coast University Financing Corporation of debt to finance the construction of student residences Phase 12. Is there such a motion?
Move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Now we'll again call on Chris to review what I would call not good news, but the only news we have as it relates to our capital outlay budget.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Yes, we don't have very good news to report. Once again, we're looking at a PICO number for projects of approximately $110 million. That compares to last year's appropriation of $260 million. And so obviously all the schools, as well as the chancellor, are hoping to see some increase. Primarily we're hoping that the legislature could perhaps do another tax shift, which was revenue neutral, and provide some additional monies. The estimating conference, unless something radically changes in Florida's demographics, I don't see some magic happening otherwise for PICO. But then go into that. Attachment 1 is the list by university. It's not prioritized. and shows the funding recommendations for the next 3-year cycle. What we're attempting to do in year 1 is to provide each school with a minimum amount of infrastructure for maintenance, capital renewal, roof needs, and I think that's the bare minimum each school can kind of get by with, as well as try to finish projects that are already under construction or that have received a minimum of 75% of funding in the past, so that the previous appropriations can be used to create jobs to go forward with construction. This leaves obviously many, many projects that are desperately needed without funding next year, but we just have to hope that more PICO can be provided. That's attachment 1 is the non-prioritized list for PICO. Attachment 2 is a list that shows all projects and the total funding need. I think this is something several board members have suggested that we indicate, attachment 1 is a revenue-constrained list. We have to stay within the budget that's been allocated by statute. But to say what is the true system need, and if you look at the bottom line, that's $671 million. So there's obviously a huge difference between 671 and 110. So that's what attachment 2 represents. The projects on attachment 2 are exactly the same as on attachment 1. It just shows the full cost of what it will take to complete all those projects. And that's the first part of budget, PICO projects. I'll pause with your permission and see if there's any questions.
The staff, the chancellor, and the chairman has worked real hard on trying to be as equitable as possible with these. Obviously, with the shortfall, it's very difficult. Governor?
I've got several questions. One is, it's frustrating when we get this last minute. Why does it take so long, and what's the difficulty in getting this to us so we can look at it, try to understand it in advance of the meeting?
Well, if I may address that question. The revenue estimating conference happened this time December 8th. Then it was probably another week for the Department of Education to say, of the K through 20 PICO estimate, what's the state university's share? That has to be, it's a statutory formula they have to calculate. At that point, staff develops the list with the chancellor. We then run it, we discuss the list with the chair of this committee and then with the chair of the board. After that point, once we've discussed it with the 2 chairs, we consult with the university presidents. We send them the list so they can say, within this reduced recommendation, is there anything that should be changed? For example, they say, we really, even though you provided us 80% infrastructure, we have to have just a little more infrastructure. Cut, say, a project, $500,000. And especially happening on the December time frame, it's very difficult to get this any sooner than we can. And I would say further, the March estimate hasn't been scheduled yet, but that will likely take place sometime, first or second week of March. We'll have a new estimate, and we have a board meeting, March 23rd, 24th. So there we may have even less time, and I wish we did, somehow there was a way to get this information to the members sooner. I just don't know how to do it.
Okay. I have several questions, if I may. Okay. When you and I discussed this, and I brought up the chemistry building, that when I was touring University of Florida, you said that it was completed, but then on this analysis, when I was looking at it the other day, it shows that completion is scheduled for next year at $14 million. Is that a different building, or is it the same building? In other words, that's why I was told Florida wasn't in the mix for funding.
No, sir. The University of Florida chemistry, chemical biology building is not completed. So far, it's only received $7.6 million of funding, and the project itself needs another $58 million to complete.
Okay,
so
so
that's why it's
that
not,
just didn't make the cut.
It didn't make
Okay.
the cut because it had not received enough prior appropriations. Even if we could provide it, say, a large sum of money, it would take, significant monies to be able to go to construction.
And as far as the process goes, these funds are just then being held until enough money is accumulated to start, or do they, in anticipation of future funding, start and just go slow?
What they do, our general model is to fund planning, which planning is roughly usually about 10% of project cost. Construction is roughly 80, 10% is equipping. So when money is provided up front, if there's sufficient funds provided, the university will go forward with the planning process. That might be just conceptual design. They may go all the way through schematic design.
Let me use an example. The FSU Applied Science Building is $11 million that was funded last year. That's obviously far more than planning because it only takes $10 million to complete. Has it actually been started, or is that money just sitting in the bank waiting on these additional funds?
That building in particular is, I would probably defer to FSU, but I know that building is receiving additional funds in addition to PICO. I believe FSU is using some grant dollars to allow that project to go forward. I know it's pretty far advanced in planning. I'm not sure if it's actually gone to construction or not. It's coming out of the ground.
Okay. So we don't wait until all the money is done. We've got a good sense that it'll be coming.
Right, because it's
Okay.
already under construction. We know FSU is putting additional dollars into that project in addition to the PICO dollars.
My last question, when we were talking about the next school, FAMU, was the Crestview project, the pharmacy. And you said that 75% of these projects have already been funded and we're just trying to finish them up. That's a project that, from what I understand from talking to the president yesterday, hasn't even started.
Yeah, that project is actually not a PICO project. It's actually a general revenue funded project that was not appropriated in the state university system budget. It was appropriated in the Department of Health's budget. So it's not on this list because it's not a PICO project. And the university to this point has not requested any PICO funding for renovating that facility, and I don't believe they intend to at this point in time.
Okay, so the $8.3 million is not the Crestview project?
No, that's for pharmacy phase 2, and you can see they received last year $23 million, so that additional $8.3 million will allow them to go forward with construction. The $6 million is for finishing and equipping the pharmacy, which is more than the 10%, but because it's pharmacy, it's more equipment intensive than, say, a typical classroom facility.
So we don't have anything to do with this Crestview project?
Well, the board today on its agenda, of course, has to approve Crestview as an educational site pursuant to board regulation to allow FAMU to expend the monies they appropriated. Even though not appropriated in the education budget, it has to be established as a state educational site. That's the only action legally the board is required to take to allow FAMU to expend those dollars.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions on PICO? It will come back again in March. John, Governor Temple.
Yeah, under USF,
Please use the mic so that it can be recorded.
Under US, John's asked all my questions up to USF. Can you just kind of summarize how much USF Polytechnic, new campus, phase 1, whatever, is going to cost us over the years? I mean, that's the biggest chunk out of this whole thing.
If I could address that, I would like to go to attachment 2.
Attachment 2.
And that's what this is designed to somewhat show for all projects what the total cost, of the project are going to be. So if you look at first line item 2, Polytechnic new campus phase 1, you can see there's going to be a project cost in total of $36.4 million. And that basically will allow USF to construct the actual, first building on that new site. If you go further down the list, and get a sheet here. 14. Thank you. 14, new campus phase 1 completion at $25 million. It's because it's a site that's completely undeveloped. This is the road network, the infrastructure, the utility lines, all the associated infrastructure that you need with a new campus or a new site of any time. That's what that is. Otherwise, you'll have that first facility and it will be there, but maybe there'll be a dirt road leading to that facility, or maybe gravel or something. This would allow them to put in the extensive infrastructure needed for that site. You go further down the line, 20, thank you. That's the second building. That's the School of Pharmacy at the Polytechnic. This pharmacy school will be headquartered and based out of the main campus, but located at Polytechnic. And then somebody help me, I think there's one more, 28. This is their wellness research facility at $17 million. And this is what is being recommended for funding. I believe USF has developed a master plan for the site with several more facilities. And I think, as with all our institutions, how much is put into that campus will depend on the success and the growth that occurs at that site. As we've seen, I think, with Gulf Coast being our newest institution, as it's continued to succeed and grow, we have, put more and more resources to meet the demands for growth, as we do for all our facilities. I don't know if that's addressing your question or
Well,
not.
what happens if we don't get funding in the future? I mean, this is all spread out in the future. What happens if we get the same kind of treatment we got this year?
Well, I would
Does it just stop, or what?
Well, it's somewhat hypothetical, but I know that the statutes require, if funds are not expended within 31 months and are not put under contract, they're subject to what's called reversion, and which means that the governor's office will look at all projects that have not been expended within 31 months and determine whether they should be reverted or the funds returned back to the state. The same process then also occurs in June of each year, where the governor's office looks at all projects. If it's not under contract or under construction, it's subject to reversion. And obviously the legislature as well is copied on that process, and they could reappropriate the funds or take the funds back. So that applies for all projects, and every year, every institution with funds not expended is at risk that the funds will go back to the state.
Okay, then moving on to FIU, there's money in the future for land acquisition. What's that for?
FIU has been growing.
Like $10 million, right?
Let me go to FIU.
Yeah.
And that's page 2.
Yeah.
FIU has been growing, and at this point in its institution's life is now finding that it's, reaching the limits of its natural existing boundaries, and as with, many of our institutions over the years, is looking for some land acquisition dollars. So if a parcel becomes available adjacent to the campus, they can take advantage by having these funds there to acquire property. And I know all our schools have, used the land acquisition category over the years to allow them to grow, particularly, the ones that are more landlocked. I know for sure FSU, North Florida had an issue a few years ago. We haven't seen land acquisition of recent, in the last few years, but I know that FIU and I believe North Florida
North
as well
Florida
is looking for more land acquisition dollars.
Yeah, North Florida's got $3 million for this next year.
Right, but with the land acquisition, we don't, they have in their master plan, they say, well, here's where we'd like to expand if the property becomes available, but we don't specify, well, it's this particular parcel or that particular parcel, because we don't know what will become available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions on PICO? Entertain a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. I'm going to briefly change the order of the agenda so that we can spend some more time on item 5. Item 6, I thought was an extremely good report summarizing the energy cost of the university, our whole system. We've done a pretty good job in reducing that. There are several items that it appeared to me we might be able to save money if we were able to acquire these through some common bid procedure with all of our universities involved. So I've asked Chris and staff to look at that and then report it to the appropriate Board of Governors Committee for further review. The student life survey, we're moving forward with that. It's been completed. Draft report's about ready, and you'll be getting that information soon. So seeing no questions on these two items, let's go back and report some good news, at least, in this meeting, which is an update on where we stand with our completed projects. Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may, back on the budget, there was several other attachments that are more formulaic, the Cortellis list of projects, the request to operate facilities. I don't know that we need to review any of those, but I think for the record, we might need a motion on the entire budget.
Okay, I thought that's what we did, but I'm sorry if we didn't.
I'm sorry,
missed that.
we did PICO, and I know we haven't
Okay.
had Cortellis funding in some years, but we do have to formally
Would
approve
entertain
those.
a motion
Yes.
to approve the
capital
Cortellis,
budget.
the capital budget, and everything else in the report. How's that? All in favor? Motion passed.
And I do apologize for that, sir. And I think if staff, we're ready for the completed projects presentation. And this is something we started at the request of Chair Parker several years ago, going over all the projects that were actually finished in the system in the last calendar year. And it's probably more of an art than a science, because we certainly know all the facilities that have been approved by this board, whether for bonding or whether for, from PICO funding or from Cortellis funding, which we have some Cortellis projects completed this year. But I want to be clear that, these are the monies that are appropriated through this board. It doesn't list the things that are acquired or donated to the universities, which are numerous. I know the board will recall, the Buckingham property was donated to Gulf Coast. They acquired, dozens of small facilities. What's the value? It came from the state. But these are the ones where staff were involved in the construction or renovating. And we start with our smallest project that was over $2 million here at West Florida, the Building 70. And if you can see the picture, they took a rather, drab-looking building and made it, look pretty neat. And it's for their building construction and career and technical education. And so this was a combination of CITF and PICO dollars. We have about 10 or 12 of these projects. We're starting to see a slowdown in projects completed, reflecting the slowdown in funds. Here's the UF Counseling and Wellness Center. This was a CITF project. I think it's important to point out that sometimes when you think of CITF projects, we think of student unions or athletic facilities. But here's one for counseling and wellness, and that's a very critically needed thing I think we'd all agree, and not think, well, the instinct might be to think, well, this came from PICO, but it didn't come from PICO. It came from the student fees. Again, here's another combination CITF Cortellis project, and its career services is to help students find employment as they graduate, and that's certainly a very worthy goal, but again, not a PICO-funded project. FAU Classroom Edition, just a basic classroom. They're looking at gold. This would be I think FAU has 2 or 3 gold facilities already LEED gold. So that's the standard they're trying to go for. And this was for their lab school, the A.D. Henderson Lab School. UCF is very proud of this public safety building, which consolidates all their emergency services on campus, and that is a PICO-funded facility. UF, East Campus Office Building. This was a bond-funded project. This is not on the main campus. This is off campus, and it's somewhat of an administrative and maybe I think some research occurs there, but that's something that we'll be developing over the years. But this was a project built from bond proceeds. USF, this was a chiller plant. I think this is a very sizable addition to their infrastructure on the campus, and this was a PICO-funded project. Here's UF, again, a CITF project, $16 million. This is probably one of the largest CITF projects we've seen in some years, but I've seen it. One of the neat things here is if you look in the green features, they have a row of exercise bikes, but those are called cardio machines. But the exercise of those cardio machines actually feeds power back into the building and helps, operate the facility. So it sounds kind of like, Rube Goldberg, but it actually is a feature of this facility.
President Matchin, do you use those regularly?
And when we were at UF, I walked by the facility, and it was 10 o'clock at night, and it was going gangbusters. All that whole quadrangle campus is just full of students, doing physical fitness exercises. FAU, speaking of fitness, here's FAU's Rec and Fitness Center. This is also a CITF facility. So we've seen that last infusion of CITF has really been very beneficial to the students, and hopefully we'll find some way of finding further CITF funds, as well as PICO. This is a renovation. Tucker Hall has just been beautifully renovated, and it's something that FAMU can be very, very proud of. USF, this is the Patel Center for Global Studies. Do I have that right, President Genshaft? Global Solutions, not studies. We're going to solve it. But this was through a combination of gifts, CITF, and some university funds. And it's a very neat, next time we're at USF, it's a very neat, maybe we'll get a tour of that facility. USF, Rec and Wellness, 22.8, another CITF project. Another UCF. UCF finished a lot of projects. This is the Partnership 3 building, which is used for military simulations. I think a couple of cycles ago, we took a tour of Partnership 2 and saw some of the neat things that UCF is doing in terms of testing and medical simulation. UF, Hugh Hall, this was been funded through private dollars. It's intended to be Cortellis. And this is for their College of Business, which is, of course, one of their marquee programs. UCF, their arts complex, and as we get into the larger amounts, we see PICO is, the lion's share of these projects. UCF, they have had a building boom on their campus. Here's Physical Sciences 2, and that achieved LEED Gold, which was one of the first facilities for UCF to achieve LEED Gold for their College of Sciences. FAU, this is called Culture and Society. This is, this was PICO and some donations that constructed this facility. This is FAU on their Davie West campus. They're, for their College of Arts and Letters on the Davie campus. FIU, I really like the look of this building. It has that sort of cube at a skew there, and that's a general purpose facility for their School of International and Public Affairs. We just have a few more to go. Florida State, Ruby Diamond, this is, again, a wonderful renovation of a very historic facility at FSU. I know it took a variety of funding sources to get this completed, and FSU has done a wonderful job. I've seen the inside of this facility. It's just amazing. FAU, this is another facility. I don't recall when we'll be at FAU, but I hope the board can get a tour of this facility. They have some very, very amazing features, energy efficient features, interactive features for their engineering, ocean computer science program that are, I don't want to say they're equal to, but they're just neat features similar to what we saw last night at UWF with their holodeck. Just cool stuff for the science geeks. FIU, I do want to spend, we just got a couple more, I do want to point this facility out and take any questions on it. This is a parking garage, but it's a parking garage that has a cafeteria, that has some retail space, and has some classrooms in it. And it's become, maybe not so much by design, but by synergy. This is a great model. This is used constantly. Students can take a class, they can have a cup of coffee, they can do some shopping. They basically don't have to leave this one spot, maybe perhaps for several hours. And it's just bustling at all hours of day and night. And it's just a really amazing thing where you can take some of the bond projects, take some PICO dollars for the classroom space, and really have something that's just, I think, pretty amazing. I use that word a lot, but I'm amazed by this one. So I think when we think of parking garages, and sometimes we get the question, why does the parking garage cost so much? Well, if you put a lot of extra features in, it can cost more, but I think it's worth it. And then lastly, the UCF College of Medicine. I know some will say, we saw this slide last year. That was the building next door, actually, which is the Burnett Biomedical Science Building. The College of Medicine was officially completed this year, and at $63 million, that's our largest project completed last year. I'd be glad to take any questions, but that's it.
Okay, any questions for Chris? That was an excellent report. It's certainly nice to see the reality of what we talk about and hope will happen. Madam Chairman, I believe that concludes the agenda. We're trying to catch up, and we almost did, but not quite. So if there's nothing further to come before facilities, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much, Governor Edwards, and you're doing fine on time.